citizen concerns? Does anybody have anything to talk about that's not already on the agenda?
Tony Weir from the Sheriff's Office, real quick. Every year, ACH is our medical provider, and we have that pool money that they give back to us in the past couple of years. It's between $70,000 and $80,000 that we've gotten back and been able to give to dentists. This year, it's $33,537. I just wanted a quick explanation. We started a new program with the state of Iowa and some other of the larger counties in the state where we're going to be sharing medical information. It's a pilot program and a grant that we signed on to. Hopefully in the long run, it will be a cost savings measure for the counties, because we'll know if John Doe gets arrested in Des Moines and then gets arrested here, we'll be able to see his medical records if he has any long-term, instead of having to send him off to a doc and finding out what's wrong with him. So that had a startup cost of about $28,000 that came out of this pool money. They're going to reimburse us. They're just waiting to see what the final number is going to be before we get it back. So I know you guys usually get a bigger check this time of year from ACH. This year it's a little smaller, but it'll be coming. It'll make up.
I know you mentioned this to me the other day, Tony, but is this Iowa only or is this interstate?
This is Iowa only. This will be for people going down to the Iowa prisons is what the big thing is. So, and it won't quite hit the 80,000 because we've had some pretty big expenses with some inmates, certain things that needed, procedures that needed to get done. We've had some pretty big surgeries need to get done for some of our inmate population this year. So that pool took a bigger hit than it has in the past few years. So, and COVID didn't help anything either. Get this to you now, you want to? That's all I got. Thanks.
So you know I will be in the office.
All right.
Where are we going after the meeting?
Yeah. Any other citizen concerns? I will move approval of today's agenda.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Radig. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 3 through 9 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 3, approval of the minutes of the April 6th, 21 meeting. 4, approval of claims. 5, board administration, approval of farm cash rent lease with Rick Bosquet of Bosquet Dairy. 6, board administration, approval of notice of property sale resolution for parcel ending in 013, also known as 1510 Myrtle Street, for Tuesday, April 27th at 4:35. 7 is approval of resolution adopting and levying special assessment in the Little Sioux Intercounty Drainage District of Monona, Woodbury, and Harrison counties. B, approval of resolution adopting and levying special assessment in the McCandless Intercounty Drainage District of Monona and Woodbury counties. And C, approval of resolution adopting and levying special assessment in the Sandhill Lakeport Intercounty Drainage District of Monona and Woodbury counties. Say that 3 times fast. 8, human resources, approval of memorandum of personnel transactions. B, authorization to initiate hiring process. C, approval of tentative agreement reached between Woodbury County and the Communication Workers of America representing civilian officers. 9, board administration, approval of lifting tax suspensions for petitioners who failed to recertify their income or income does not qualify for continued tax suspension. And B, item of resolution for a tax suspension for initials DB. Is there any discussion on any of this before we pass on these items? I will move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Radig. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay. Passes 5-0. It is 4:35. Item number 10, board administration, public hearing and sale of property parcel ending in 003, also known as 4534 Polk Street. Do we have anybody that would like to speak for or against the sale before we open it to bidding? Hearing none, I will move that we close the public hearing.
Second? Second. Whoop.
Motion by Dewitt, second by Radig. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Is there anybody that wishes to bid on the property also known as 4534 Polk Street? Would you please approach the podium and give your name and address, please?
Name is Andrea Mann. Address is 4538 Polk.
And do you have a bid?
Yep, 316.
316, and Heather, is that the including cost?
Yes.
Okay. $316. Do we have anybody else interested in this property? Going once.
I move we award the property to this young lady.
I will second that. Motion by Monson, second by DeWitt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. And Heather will help you there. Thank you very much. Item 11, Weed Commissioner. Jared Jepson and County Engineer, approval of weed destruction order resolution for 2021.
Mark Panera, Woodbury County Engineer. Annually, the board is required by code to approve a weed destruction order. Same weeds, different year. It deals with the typical noxious weeds that are defined within the state code, some which are present. Depends on what kind of a growing year we have, how much of a problem they'll be. So I recommend approval of the weed destruction order.
Move it.
I'll second, and just wondering, is anything ever taken off the list?
No, pretty much not. Thistles are our particular problem, some of the spurge weeds. They seem to cling to areas on private property. The wind-blown ones in particular, we'll have a year where we'll get a good kill and control of them in the areas where we can see them. Sure enough, they're on some back 40 that we can't see from the road, and that blows through and gets a whole new batch started for the following year. One thing I can say is that our late fall brush applications are really beginning to make a difference out there. Jared's been going out and applying brush herbicides to prevent the regrowth of the trees in the areas that we're clear cutting, and we're seeing those areas stay free of trees and saplings. So he's really worked hard over the past, I think he's been with us 8-9 years now, to try and get some of those areas addressed. So the work continues. It'll never quite be over.
Motion by Monson, second by Ung. Any other discussion or question for Mark? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Hand that down for Mark later. Let's see, we're not at the set time yet for the 4:45 set time. Item 13, Mark, would you like to go over briefly your secondary roads approved for FYI 2022 secondary road department budget?
I can do that. The board is required to file its budget with the Iowa Department of Transportation by April 15th of each year. It's basically a regurgitation of the county budget. So we project our expenses based on the numbers that have been filed with and approved by the Board of Supervisors as part of your normal budget process. I recommend approval of the budget.
I'll move approval.
Second?
Motion by DeWitt, second by Radig. Any questions for Mark on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Isn't that? Okay. And I handed your other one down Item 13B, approve FY 2022 Woodbury County Secondary Road 5-year construction program.
I have a map to share with the board. I have a map to share with the board showing our 5 years' worth of construction programs. You all have the listing. The maps are a little disappointing this year. They changed our server. I wasn't able to get quite as much detail as I have in the past, but at least you have an idea where the projects are concentrated. We'll be putting this map out on the website along with the listing that the board received as part of the backup package for today's meeting. This year, with the increases in the construction cost index and looking at what our expected projects were for the 5-year program, our last 4-year program, or the last 4 years of last year's program essentially became our 5-year program. The construction cost index on bridges and road projects is really eating up our buying power right now. Projecting similar revenues coming in, that our federal aid holds steady. If the proposed infrastructure bill passes, we may see an increase. That remains to be seen. I'm a little bit concerned with some of the language in that bill where they're addressing, I think it was environmental justice and reduced carbon emissions and how that's going to affect Iowa projects in comparison to transit and other projects elsewhere. I'm not quite sure how they're going to be holding our feet in the fire with that part of the new federal language. Currently, the County Engineers Association is working on a grant application for 8 of our most expensive bridges, county bridges in the nation, or in the whole state. They range from Delaware to Washington, Scott, Clinton, trying to remember the other counties. But we have 8 bridges selected statewide that are all pretty much $3 million and up. They're projects that we can't fund within our normal allocations of HBP funds among the 99 counties. And we're trying for a build grant with those. So it's really going to be our first chance as we work through that process to see how the feds are going to, or what their expectations are going to be with that new language, because it's the same as is imposed in the infrastructure project. But we continued with the 5-year program based on, as I said, continuing our level of revenues, hopefully getting our gravel road project done. We did have to roll back our bridge construction a little bit to help us cover the extra labor and equipment that's going to be needed to make that project work. It's still an ambitious program. We're going to be continuing to knock out some of our deficient bridges, and there are some pavement improvement projects in there as well. I don't know if the board on your examination, if you had any questions about projects that are either in or not in.
What's the cost of this 5-year program?
The total
Round
cost
numbers.
of the 5-year, that's on the last sheet. It doesn't tally it like it used to, does it, Mark?
No.
That's part of the new software issue. With our local budget, we're targeting about $1.8 million a year on average. So that puts us around $9 million in local property tax, local road use tax revenue amounts. We see about $1.6 million a year in farm to market money. So that's provided for in there as well. That gets us up around $8 million in farm to market over the course of this program. Our federal aid varies, well, what used to be federal aid is now the swap money, where the state DOT is exchanging state road use tax fund dollars for federal aid dollars. And where that serves us, this happened, I think, after your tenure.
Yep.
But we're getting dollar for dollar what we used to get in federal aid in state money. Davis-Bacon doesn't apply to it. We have a lower level of NEPA investigation that needs to be done in those periods. Am I getting on your 445?
Yeah.
We're there.
Okay, I will get
May
out
we
of
vote
here.
on
We
this
can
first?
finish this
Decide on
discussion then.
one first?
If, yeah, if you want to make a motion.
Are we close? You recommend approval of this,
I
Mark?
recommend approval. If you're ready to go,
I
I'll
will
take
move it.
Second.
it. You can always call me with questions.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Radig. Any other questions for Mark? It would be completely brief.
Well, my point is, if we get a whole lot of money from this new bill that's being proposed, we've got 5 years of projects to do.
Yes, most definitely. And we've got bridges that we can insert into the programs.
Yep. Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. And we are at our set time, 4:45. County Auditor public hearing and receive proposals and submit to the County Commissioner of Elections and for review and recommendation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pat Gill, Woodbury County Auditor. We're opening a public hearing today. We're doing this first before we open. Steve's going to give you the proposals and the attachment A for each one that submitted proposals. Through working with the County Attorney's Office, Joshua, we submitted an RFP. We published it and we put it on our website, and I sent them to the three companies that are currently doing business in Iowa. That's No Inc., 10X, and Precinct Atlas Consortium that is done by the Iowa State Association of Counties. They administer that program. So this is a public hearing at this point. I've explained what's going on here.
Are we expecting anybody else from the public to speak on this?
I don't see anybody that's here talking.
So we will need to close the public hearing as soon as we decipher the,
You'll close the public hearing, then
I'd move to close the public hearing.
Second.
motion by Monson, second by Radig to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. And we'll now receive the proposals and submit to the County Commissioner of Elections. Is there one you want to open first?
Yes, but I have a copy for each one of you, plus Joshua, and one for myself and one for Steve. So you can just open, if you want to, you can open the attachment A, which is the cost quotation. And then you'll be able to keep these proposals. If you don't want to take them with you, leave them on the desk and we'll collect them afterwards.
It's like we're all opening presents from Pat.
I just got a card.
So you only had one company?
No, we have the three companies. No Inc. is the first one that you just got. Then there's 10X, and then there's the Precinct Atlas Consortium that is administered by the Iowa State Association of Counties. There isn't, so we'll have to look these over to decipher what they mean, but they are all your, to look for. So your proposal and that sort of thing. So you want to go ahead and get the next one?
So what is this second piece? That's their
the
proposal?
itself.
Okay. I get it.
The base price for no ink is $128,750, but there are other options that we'll have to consider. We tentatively scheduled, when we sent out the schedule, that we would make a decision next week, but it just depends. I think that in talking with the staff, they would like us to put demonstrations together. We'll let you know when those take place, but the staff wants to take a look at these and give their input. If we don't get that done by next week, we'll let you know when we're ready to make a decision or a recommendation. The way it is put together, it's just kind of what we'll pick and choose, so it's difficult to determine what the total price is. But this one looks like a grand total of $81,960. But we'll determine that later from 10X.
See this 10X is from a Florida company. There's no hanging chads in this outfit, is there?
No. In fact, I did send a proposal to Smartmatic that made the news, but because they said that they were interested in doing Iowa, but the specs that we wrote said that you had to prove that you had successfully implemented in Iowa. So they didn't respond.
Okay, so there's no ink, the base price is $128,750.
Right.
This one's
81,
80?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes. But there's a lot of different things that we will consider. And the last one is from, okay. Is that the attachment there? Yeah. Oh, go ahead and open that and give it to each one of those folks.
I'm in chat.
Hanging around, Chad. The difference between these proposals, when we look at the Precinct Atlas software, is that what happens usually is the counties will purchase their own hardware, the options, and it runs on a laptop, which we are trying to move away from. But a lot of counties do use Precinct Atlas Consortium in Iowa, but that is something that we'll have to look at very closely, whether we want to do that or not. So they list out, they give you several different options. And we'll have to look at it to determine exactly what they're doing.
Is this a different method? They have a annual dues?
Yes. Yep. What it does is, what it actually started out is the auditor in Cerro Gordo County came up with this software program and gave it to a lot of other counties to use when the electronic poll books first came into vogue. And it got to be so big, and it's very hard for them to keep up with the changes and everything, so they passed it off to the Iowa State Association of Counties to administer. But what had happened in the meantime was the Secretary of State's office under Matt Schultz had developed a electronic poll book, and that's what we had used because there was no charge to it, and they kept it updated. But they no longer wanted to do that, and we're at the point that our laptops, I don't know how old are they, 10 years old or so?
The ones that go out to the precincts?
Yes, and so this is, they were failing, but we didn't want to start that process in front of a general election, so we waited till this year, and that's when that was a drop-dead date by the Secretary of State's office, is that they were no longer going to support that, so we used that right up until the end, and they are no longer supporting it, so we now have to move on. And the generation, what the private enterprise is doing is that they're using poll pads or iPads is what they're using in order to do it. Much more stable environment. The printers aren't nearly as big. What we're hauled around to our precinct election officials. And so that's kind of what the Precinct Atlas software is. I told them that we would include them, and we will look at that too. And what we intend on doing is taking it back to our staff and doing demonstrations and get their input, and then we'll bring back a recommendation to you.
On these three?
Cost. On those three.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay,
You need a motion to receive these?
please.
I will move to receive the bids.
Second?
Motion by DeWitt, second by Radig. Any other questions for Mr. Gill? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. The last one, we're done with the year item.
No, we got one more, Mark.
Yeah, we're done with the 4:45 set time. We have one more for Mr. Nera. Secondary Roads, item C, approve the contract for pavement markings 2021 with Vogel Traffic Services.
I'll move that.
Motion by Radig, second by DeWitt. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Is that something that needs to be signed? I think I passed one down to somebody. Okay. Item 14, Board of Supervisors. Approval to appoint county treasurer to fill the position of retired Michael Clayton. And I will be still running the meeting, but I think since everything has been, Mark, here's your, all the interviews have been done, and I did not participate in any of that. I will still run the meeting and approve the motions and such like that, so it's in your hands.
To be clear, that means you're going to be voting?
I am not going to be
Okay.
voting.
Are you
We're going
turning
to
it
start
over?
out with a nomination, is that the deal?
Well, we're open for discussion, I think, is the best way to approach it from the board. You would like me to assume the chair?
Don't get too used to it.
Well, I'm used to it. Well, there's no easy way to do this, but the correct way to do it is to have the open discussion. I'm willing to begin unless another supervisor would like to comment.
It's kind of like that volunteer thing where everyone steps back, you know.
Yeah?
Well, as someone who found myself in this role through a special election, I've not been saying a whole lot, but I've been thinking a lot over the last couple of weeks about, you know, why aren't we doing this in a special? And as we've been having those discussions week in and week out, I've grown comfortable with our process for a couple of reasons. Number one, 3 of us were just reelected, just within the last 6 to 9 months. So the people of the county were given an opportunity to select some people that they trust to do the county's business. And so that's one reason why I've come to feel comfortable with how we've gone about this process. And then another reason, I think we found 3 outstanding applicants. No. Yeah, we wouldn't want anybody to miss this wisdom.
Is anyone on the phone that missed everything Mr. Wright just said? I don't have any. Okay.
I say we could just have them repeat it word for word.
No, I don't know if I could do that. Is there somebody transcribing? The other reason why I've come to appreciate the way we've done it is because I think the 3 applicants are all fine applicants. I think we're going to find somebody who's going to do this job very, very well over a very short-term period of time. In 19 months, the people of the county will get to vote again. And from the time that I've spent one-on-one with all 3 of the applicants, I'm fully expecting a spirited primary. I think I've through those discussions, I've been led to believe by all 3 that regardless of what our outcome was today, I think they will all be trying to convince the voters here in a very short period of time that they are the person to fulfill this role. And so just in terms of the process, that's kind of where I've landed. Why do I feel the 3 applicants are strong? I think leadership. I think through the interview process, all 3, I think have the leadership qualities to do the job. They're all connected to our community. They've been living here for a period of time. They understand the people of Woodbury County. They understand what it means to be a Sioux Cityan or a resident here in Woodbury County. That all 3 understand who we are in our community. I think very, very excellent communication skills were demonstrated in the interview process. Experience, either in the industry, in the area of finance, or just having experience here in the county as someone who is known to get things done. And then finally, just reputation. I didn't take a single call from anyone or receive any emails. No one took the time to express any concerns with any of the 3 candidates that came before us. And so, with that said, I'm comfortable with the process and with the person that I'm going to support to do the job for the next few months.
Sounds like you're going to support all 3 of them.
Well, would anybody else care
Oh, sure. You don't have
to chime in?
I'm just putting you on the spot. You're not in the middle.
No, so are there any other?
Does anyone else want to say anything?
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment that, all 3 applicants were very well qualified to ask to be nominated. Again, checking with some references or just calling around, receiving phone calls, emails, which, quite a few. Never heard anything negative about any of them, and it was all, pretty encouraging stuff that I've heard about those people that are up for nomination.
Well, the board did decide unanimously to support an appointment process, one consideration being cost. In my mind, I think the community has also been through enough special elections and appointments in the last few years, and as Mr. Wright
We don't want this to happen again.
aptly pointed out, there will be a chance for anyone appointed or desiring to run as usual. One thing that's kind of taken me aback in this process hasn't really been from the board, but the fact that entities and some individuals have asked us to look at, more identity politics. We've been asked to engage in identity politics rather than due diligence, considering what gender someone is, where they're, other different identifying characteristics like that, rather than the merit. And I understand that we all can come to our own decision on how we approach that, but my determination is to approach it based on the experience and based on the ability to do the job. So fundamentally, it doesn't matter to me that Tina Bertrand is a woman or that Colby DeWitt is the nephew of Supervisor Rocky DeWitt. I am interested in the most qualified as determined by and defined by the totality of their merits and experience, and where I would anticipate seeing the Treasurer's office to be a couple years after this appointment. So I did my due diligence on the candidates. I made my own calls as well. And from where I sit, I think we have a responsibility as a board, and that is, one way we can show that is by a responsible appointment. Again, we've been entrusted with votes where we are. Mr. Clayton knew the process, what would happen, and that the board has this ability and this duty. And so that my support will go to Tina Bertrand. She has worked not only as a conduit of communication, but as being the responsible party for lengthy job duties and projects, which I think that public-private job experience will serve well, and the financial background is a plus too.
I would have to second that. My whole thing is based on just pure who could do the job, and I think Tina has the most experience in handling $20 to $50 million. Just think of the interest we're going to get off that. Appoint 025.
Buy Ethereum tomorrow. Sorry, Mark, go ahead. Nobody knows Ethereum?
Well, I did want to say too, qualification-wise, I think Tina's qualifications were the best. I did want to commend Colby's interview, very well said. If you can take along the principles of treat everyone like your mother, or in some cases your grandmother, because some people just aren't nice to their moms.
What?
Some people are. Trust me, I see all kinds in the furniture store. The other part was the pointing out the customer satisfaction with the department on Google. It'd be great to see that, trending upward or staying where it's at. It's pretty impeccable. I'm sure if we had Google reviews on each of us, we probably wouldn't have 4.5 stars. So I guess hearing that we have 3 people willing to support, I'll go ahead and move that we appoint Tina Bertrand to County Treasurer.
I'll second. I want to add that the board's decision here as it impacts a relative of the Board of Supervisors is, it's not as if it's only a decision based on that. It's not as only that affects that person. What I mean is that all of us on the board still work with and still respect Rocky and understand the position he's been put in just by virtue of the process and by the treasurer's decision to endorse in a resignation letter and the timing of all of this working out, the different political paths diverging at the same time, so to speak, as was alluded to. And so wanted to echo Mr. Raddick's comments earlier that as far as I know, you have not lobbied any of us or done anything improper in this whole process, and just want to state that for the record. Mr. Wright?
Did I get a second?
Yes.
Okay.
No? Cool. Okay.
Yeah, it was Matthew. And, yeah, I guess to repeat, you know, I absolutely appreciate the job that Michael Clayton's done. I do think it is his right to put out in a letter that he wants somebody to be nominated, but as a board, we do get to choose, and we get to choose the process. And I feel that it was as open and public as you could be in the process. I honestly think that Colby is a young guy. He's got a lot of talent and skill and ability to, you know, either run for this position or maybe one of ours. So hopefully we say enough stuff to not make him mad at us. I guess, you know, with that, I appreciate everyone that's been participating. Mike, thank you as well. And you know, thank you to the staff for coming, and, you know, I appreciate your interest in the process that we've done. But with that, yeah. Anyone else have anything to say?
Anything else?
For me, my decision came down to who I believe is going to hit the ground running with regard to technical expertise, and it's Tina, without question. So that's why I'm supporting her.
Well, it's clear, but for the record, let's do a roll call.
Monson.
Aye.
Ratty.
Aye.
Allen.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Abstain.
Passes 4-0 with one abstention by Rocky DeWitt. Congratulations, Tina. We are going to, I suppose I'll continue with this next item, the discussion to approve when to swear in the new county treasurer. This is also for action. Pat, what's the best way to decide this? We have the incoming here.
It's, they can be sworn in by virtually anybody. And it's up to you folks, it's up to the appointee, how she wants to handle that too. I think you can discuss that, see
Okay.
when she would want to have that happen.
Well, I just became an Iowa notary, so I'm kind of a big deal. I'm just kidding.
But Tina,
You'll probably want to judge.
Tina, can you come up to the microphone? We'll kind of just discuss with you, since you would be the one being sworn in.
I'm having a hard time hearing you guys back there. Sorry.
So, I don't know, sometimes we do it before meetings, board meetings, sometimes after, sometimes, you know, you're the treasurer, you can do it whenever you want, I guess, you know, because we don't have to be present for it, it's just.
How about, let me throw this out, next Tuesday at 4:30, we'll have Judge Hoffmeyer come down and swear you in. Does that work?
That will work. Next Tuesday, 4:30.
Makes it official.
It'll make it official. Give me a week to get used to it, right?
Is there anything in the next week that would make that an issue?
No,
It's coming up. You guys got it?
Diana's running things.
You got another week. You can handle it.
Handle it.
Yeah.
Okay.
When
All right.
swearing in, you can bring any family, friends, anybody that wants to come. It's a pretty quick process. You just say, you know, raise your right hand, and
Just make
You
sure
have to
there's
speak.
enough room.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Speak truthfully, of course, and making the oath.
Well, it's a little different when you got this guy in the robe who says, will you uphold the Constitution and behave as a person all the way through? And you go, ooh, this is official.
Was there something about behaving?
Yes. It's not the way he says it.
While you're up here, is there anything you'd like to say? Not to put you on the spot, but
Other than, I think I said the last time, if I was selected, I would be greatly honored, and I am. I hope I can live up to, I think I have some pretty big shoes to fill, so I'm hoping that I can live up to those. I know I'm up to the challenge, and I don't doubt my experience, and I'm excited about being able to kind of get involved and start meeting the staff and all the other people, and maybe I'll take some time and talk to the ladies that have joined us tonight. So, but again, thank you. I actually am very honored that you all think that I was the most qualified of the 3 qualified people that you had. I know that it was a very difficult decision. I mean, I had the opportunity to be first in line to give a presentation and kind of tell you a little bit about myself, and got to listen to the other 2 gentlemen, and I definitely believe it was a difficult choice for all of you. So I just, again, all I can say is I really appreciate it. I appreciate the support. So thank you.
Thank you. So I'll move to schedule the swearing in of the new county treasurer for next Tuesday at 4:15 in the basement of the courthouse. Second by Wright. Any discussion or anyone know of a schedule conflict? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. I'll turn it back over to Chairman DeWitt.
I did. Item 15, Board Administration, approval of Woodbury County nonprofit funding request and assurances document.
I looked this over and it looks pretty good to me. Short and sweet. And I assume Joshua had a lot of input.
I did, yeah. Basically, it's a continuation of discussion from last week. I think our marching orders were to try to condense the form that we had before, still provide for the opportunity to really explain who they are, what the project is, and explain the public purpose that they're putting forth. Ultimately, it's up to the board to identify that as part of the decision-making process, but it's helpful when the applicant explains exactly what they're doing and how they feel that it meets that. And then the assurance is part of it, allows for the county to oversee, to ensure that the funds are spent consistent with the application and that public purpose.
Sir?
Pat Gill, Woodbury County Auditor, and I'm going to provide you with some history and why, what my concerns are about this. In October 25th of 1997, I was a baby auditor at that time. And we had some issues with some claims that were being processed at that point. And so I sought an opinion from Tom Mullen, the county attorney. I asked him what my legal obligations with respect to recording claims for payment. And not going to read the whole letter, but in short, as county auditor, you have the legal duty to number claims consecutively in the order of filing, to enter each claim in the claim register alphabetically by name of the claimant and include for each claim the date it was filed, its claim number, its general nature, the action taken on it by the Board of Supervisors, and if approved by the board, funds used to pay it. What that in short told me, and I was pleased to get that ruling, is that I had no ability to audit, even though I was called the county auditor. We had no ability to audit during that period of time. What was happening was some claims were being held up by my office, and the claimant was complained about that. That's why I sought the opinion, and I found out that I couldn't audit anything, okay? That was early. And this one I found was interesting. November 30th of 2000, a county attorney's opinion was given on the Mildred Anderson gift. And the bottom line was there is that this is what John Rush offered as a county attorney's opinion at that time. As such, though words of restriction exist as to how Mildred desired the money to be spent, these restrictions are superfluous to the outright gift, and thus no enforcement exists to ensure that the terms are followed. What that means is that when that gift was given to the county, is that they were county dollars, and that's consistent with what we're hearing today. Is those were county dollars, even though in her will she had spelled out some things. And what he said to do was to try to follow what her wishes were at that time in the will. But there was no reason that you had to do that. In the early 2000s, a donation was given to a nonprofit of $35,000. And within, it seemed like it was a month, I don't know what short period of time, but $35,000 was given, I think it was from gaming revenues, from the boat, they called it boat money at that time. And that entity was gone in a very short period of time, and so was the money. It just disappeared, we never heard anything. There wasn't any way that we could do anything about that money. That's the most egregious thing that I can remember occurring at that time, and that's when it really brought those things to my attention. Early 2010s, pressure starts to mount about nonprofit funding. There was controversy in Woodbury County about how that money was being handled. At the same time, and it was a similar situation as what occurred in 2013, there was a conflict in Lynn County between the auditor and the Board of Supervisors there. And they went to court, and the court found in favor of the supervisors, said the same thing that I had already told you, is that the auditor cannot audit at that point. In 2013, the auditor goes to the legislature, and they slip it in an appropriations bill, but they give it a duty to the county auditor, number 30, it's duty number 37 of 331-502 code section. It says the auditor have the authority to audit at the auditor's discretion the financial condition and transaction of all county funds and accounts for compliance with state and federal law. As soon as he did that, as soon as the legislature did that, I thought that's a double-edged sword. I was very comfortable with not having the ability to audit. I was glad to hear that. And now they gave it to us. And so what I started doing during that period of time after that was passed, I would come to the board during budget hearings and say, we have all our duties, we're performing them now. But the Board of Supervisors had also passed financial policies and that sort of thing. And so I kept, during that period of time, Dennis and I jousted a little bit during that period of time but I just said, because it said the auditor will do this. And I said, I'm not doing that. You're not giving me the resources to do it, and I'm not doing it. And so we changed it. There were a couple of times we changed those policies, but they said, the bottom line is it goes with the Board of Supervisors. But I would ask, and occasionally during the budget hearings, I've been asking for money to do those things that you wanted to do and in order to do those things. And it's been denied. During that period of time, there was a time after this was passed and that there was still money going to nonprofits. I actually came to the board. It was upstairs. Joshua was there. I asked for the ability to follow the money that was being given to some of these outside firms, and that was denied too. But what my concern was at that time was the same thing that we were talking about, is that when I saw that money go to that first entity and it walked away, is that now they've given me this discretion to do that, and I asked for it to do it, CYA, and just say, you know, at that point that I asked for it. Joshua said you can't audit outside entities. I didn't say it very elegantly. I wasn't wanting to do that. What I wanted to do was follow the money to make sure that the county, that money was being spent for the reasons that it was given. In 2016, pressure had been mounting about giving money to nonprofits. And we came up with that period of time was that, I think it's 9 or 10 pages now, that application that was put together then at that time. And an amount was set aside. It was $80,000 of gaming revenues. Is that correct, Dennis? Correct. Yep. And so that money was put out there. And then at the time during the budget hearings, they came to be is that they had these nonprofits who had all prepared and put in grants, and then the rug was essentially pulled out from underneath them. There wasn't any money given except a few that a decision was made afterwards to fund those that leverage tax dollars. But I received lots of calls, well, not lots of calls, I received calls from nonprofits that were very angry that they had made, that the board had offered that, and they had spent a lot of time and resources to put together that, and it was denied at that end. And I just told them, you know, there wasn't a thing I could do about it. That's the board's decision. They could do that, and it was at their discretion to do it, and they have done so. And I said, you know, I'm not the one you should be talking to. You should go to the Board of Supervisors and talk to them about that. But in nonprofits, I mean, honestly, what occurs is they didn't want to do that. They don't want to go forward and to be in conflict with that. In 2020, a supervisor asked for an audit, and I explained to him the same thing. As I said, if you want an audit, that we don't have the resources to do that. If you want to do that, you can contract with you can ask for an audit from the state auditor's office, or you can go to a private auditing firm to do that. But I had asked for the money, and it was denied, and so we don't do that. Now 2021 comes along, and what the state auditor all of a sudden starts within the spring school, right at the time that it was within days of the Mildred Anderson thing. And what they presented at the spring school through Zoom meetings was that it's unconstitutional to give county money to nonprofits. But there's this gray area. We talk about public purpose. But and it occurred here again just the other day. I mean, the Mildred Anderson money, the board went forward with that, and it just rang a bell. And the same thing they talked about, there was a case on point, I don't remember exactly what, but it was money that was given to a county, and the county turned around and gave it away to somebody, and they were criticized for that. And what is going on today is that right now, the county auditors are asking questions of the state auditor's office, and they're going to present them to them, because what they're concerned about is the state auditor also is telling them to go after funds that they already gave, to recover those funds. And that's what they're concerned about. And so, and this was just an article that just came out yesterday. And it says at least 6 official Iowa Attorney General opinions since 1972 have concluded that a governmental body may not donate public funds to a private entity, even if the entity is established for charitable, educational purposes and performs work which the government could perform directly. So what this does is put county auditors in a lurch, and that's what the other auditors are concerned about, as well as myself, is that you folks go forward with giving this money. Now we, as county auditors, have to weigh in on that at our discretion. But if somebody raises an issue, why didn't you? That's what I'm concerned with. That's what I talked about, the double-edged sword, is that's a concern we have. I've Googled public purpose, trying to figure out what that is. And you know, we can ask Joshua and talk about that. But you know, I'm just concerned. I'm asking you to pause at this time until this is kind of fleshed out as far as what is going to happen. Joshua, do you know, are you aware of 6 opinions that say that?
Well, I think the main Attorney General's letter, or the most recent one, was part of the backup materials that were provided to the board previously. And it does reference in there that, yeah, that's the position that they've consistently taken. And I mean, it is there in black and white in the Constitution that you can't just make an outright donation.
Take your mask off.
I'm gonna go back and sit down. What I did was I just wanted to address your concerns, because what I think you're doing, and I just want you to be aware of it, is that you're putting me potentially in an adversarial role with the board, and I don't want to be there.
Why would you, I don't quite understand. I was a part of the 2014-15 fiasco. There were 3 supervisors that wanted to create another MIRD.
Right.
Which was crazy.
Right.
And so when
We are not MIRD.
when there were only 2 left to put that together, it got shut down, along with the 1-cent sales tax that was being given as economic development money to individual businesses. That money ended up going to the towns in the county. Creating a mechanism to give away money to nonprofits didn't make any sense at all. The ones that we're talking about here, Meals on Wheels, that involves a lot of counties, 20, 30, whatever Connections is. CERTS involves 5 counties. So when we participate in giving them money, there's 4 other counties and CERTS that are coming up with money to keep that organization going. Same with Meals on Wheels. Every county is contributing. Siouxland Mental Health, we got to get rid of that money. I don't see that as an asset of the county to be put in the general fund. Mildred had a purpose. And Lamb Arts is that area where if the city and the county doesn't participate, they're going to miss out on about $6 million. So that's leveraging big money through the participation of the city and the county. Giving money, just saying, okay, all you nonprofits apply, that's not right. Now, if you feel you have to monitor these, if we gave funds to these 4, are you saying you would have to audit those?
No, what I'm saying is I don't know if I agree with your ability to do that at this point. Because you just said about Mildred Anderson money that you have to give it away. There's nothing that says you have to give it away. There's absolutely those are county dollars. And that's what I just read to you, the county attorney's opinion. And it's not only here in Woodbury County. There was another one that was exactly the same situation, that money was given to a county, and the auditors, the state auditor and the attorney general's opinion is those are county dollars. And there's no requirement that you give it away. They are county dollars. And just the other things is what it opens you up to is the criticism, is pet projects that you give. That's a lot of what is going on across the state, is that supervisors who serve on boards are also giving money to, to those entities. And that occurs, I mean, it's occurred here. So I'm just saying it isn't clear to me. And I'm saying that you're potentially putting me at odds with the board, and I don't want to be there. And I want to feel comfortable about that, and I don't at this point.
Don't you see that as a good thing, though?
Pardon?
Don't you see that as a good thing to gain public trust?
Don't I see what?
Don't you see that as being a positive, that we may approve some funding for a not-for-profit, but then you have some oversight responsibilities? Maybe not, because then, especially in our county where you have to be of one political party and we happen to be from another, I would think that's an opportunity to show the public that those dollars that are being spent for those purposes, it's an opportunity to show the public that there's agreed upon trust for how those dollars are being spent.
And you know what? If that's the way it goes, and you give those money, I agree
Maybe
with
I'm
you.
too naive.
No, I'm agreeing with you. Is that I think that is a good opportunity to do that. But what I'm not in agreement at this point is that you can actually do that. And the issue has been with the state auditor. The criticism has been is that he's running for governor and he's found an issue to run on. But the problem, is that a lot of these counties have been audited by his office, and the auditors have not called that practice into question during that period of time. Our auditors have never called it into question at this period of time.
And in 16 is when the law was changed to open up the door for, 16 is when the law changed so that you feel that the auditors were given some oversight?
2013 is when the county auditor was given that. And, but this has always been the case, and I wasn't aware, honestly wasn't aware that it had been called into question several times, about giving money to nonprofits. And so I've talked to Joshua about this, and I do have a concern. I don't know, what it is. And I'm just saying is that we should hit the pause button at this point, and because the questions are being asked of the state auditor's office, and imagine the Attorney General's office will be brought into it once again. Do you know anything, Joshua, that's going on?
Well, we haven't been asked to give an opinion about donations to nonprofits. I mean, the last Attorney General's opinion is from 2008, and I've pointed that out to the board and I believe to Pat previously. So it's not a new issue. I don't think anyone disagrees that you can't make a contribution. The gray area is when it's an expenditure, setting it up as an expenditure of public funds for a public purpose. And as part of that, the board has to retain oversight over the funds. You can't just expend them and trust that the organization all on their own, not have them report back, or at least have the mechanism in place where you can audit or request documentation, and just to ensure that they go there. Now, what different counties across the state are doing to meet that oversight piece, I think varies a lot county to county, and there's not a good case or even guidance in the Attorney General's opinions as far as what does that oversight look like. I think some counties have determined that, well, if there's a member of the Board of Supervisors that's a part of the board of this organization in their official capacity as a Board of Supervisors sitting on that board, then that's adequate oversight for the funding dollars. Others have a written report that the organization submits. So I think that's where the gray area is. And again, there's not a clear case on what does that oversight need to look like.
Each time the board does this, can I ask you for an opinion?
What's that?
I said, each time the board does this, can I ask you for an opinion?
What kind of time frame are you thinking we need to wait to find out more information?
I know that the county auditor's executive board is going to present those questions to the state auditors. I don't know how soon they'll get a response or anything like that of that nature. And how they, and a big issue is how they're going to deal with the question of looking at the donations that have been made or contributions or whatever you want to call them, whatever is politically correct to say that, is whether they're going to ask them to go back and try to recover those funds. So, I mean, those are questions that are up in the air. It's not something here just in Woodbury County. That's what I want to try to make clear to you, is that this is going on. And I know other counties have been doing it for a long period of time. And they're all, there's some pretty strong conversations that are going on right at this point about this practice.
What, like CERTs, do we have a 2080 agreement with them at all? I mean, would a 2080 agreement solve some of these?
Now, 2080 would be something like Woodbury County Community Agency, where we're actually contracting out services such as the.
Well, because CERTs were essentially contracting services, and we're working with other counties.
I mean, before we, 2080, Joshua, correct us, that's between governments. You can have.
Right, it doesn't fit, it doesn't quite fit when it's a nonprofit, and especially if it's a one-time gift or a one-time project, a 2080 wouldn't really be appropriate for that. If it's an ongoing thing, I could see some sort of an agreement, whether it would be specifically a 2080 or not. The assurances document is basically an agreement on the part of the organization to cooperate with the oversight. It's not in the form of a 2080, again, because I don't think that's necessarily the right mechanism, but that's the goal, is that there's.
Well, isn't one of the assurances that we be board members at some of these organizations? Like, I'm on the CERT's board, I think, slowly, because I'm supposed to keep accountability with their funding and spending.
Well, and that goes back to what I said earlier. Some counties have looked at this issue and come to the decision that having a supervisor sit on the board does provide that adequate oversight.
Because CERT's board doesn't get money because I'm on their board. I'm on their board because they get our money, is the way I see it. And that's the same for all the Simcoe boards that I serve on. I mean,
The Woodbury County Community Action Agency, you have a contract with them, and they are actually performing services that the county, basically, the board outsourced those duties to the Community Action Agency. That works well.
so basically we need to come up with a contract for CERTs or, I mean, what else do we have in Simcoe? I know we have
But the issue
Housing
there.
Trust Fund.
But the issue there is the public purpose, is
Sure.
that the duties that the Community Action Agency are performing for you are duties that the county would have to perform. And so they outsource those duties. Now, when you're talking about public purposes.
Yeah, certs, they're doing bus service for out in the county, which,
Right,
so.
yeah.
But I don't think anybody's arguing what is happening, what's taking place, and where the money is going, but as we're not the only county that's going through this at the moment, I'm going to recommend that we do take Mr. Gill's advice and step back and wait for some other opinions to come through.
Fine with that?
I will move that.
Wait.
The only thing you gotta be very careful of, you need a decision very soon because someone like CERTS is planning on this money for next fiscal year. If it is ruled that you don't do it, CERTS is out of business, Meals on Wheels is out of business. So
But
you gotta
what-
make a decision soon.
Well, you put a bunch of other counties in a bind.
But I'd rather, I guess, sitting here listening to everything that we just listened to, I'd rather put the brakes on than try and claw some money back in the future.
Right. True.
So,
But when
which
you
is it?
decide
That's
soon.
what I understand that, but I'm saying that I kind of think the horse is dead. I mean, we understand that we're up against a little bit of a wall here, 3 walls for that matter, but I don't want to, in the near future, claw money back either.
No, you
So-
need to give more out, but it's gonna be difficult to claw it back, and that lays right back on the state auditor's office. They haven't enforced this for years, so how can they go back and enforce it, claw it back? You're putting agencies completely out of business because of their mistake, not only theirs, our auditors, everybody. And I'm not referring to county auditor. I'm referring, during the audits, everybody's against this and non-enforced it. So
Well, this is
back to all.
this is a situation that we did not create.
We did not create it at all.
So that's where it puts us in the bad spot, and it makes us, in effect, look like bad people, when that's not the case. And I would like the public to understand that, but at the same time, here we are. And I'm not willing to, personally, I'm not willing to
I'm just
rush to
saying-
judgment and get this thing going and then have it come back and bite us.
All I'm saying is it needs to get cleared up soon, not 2 months from now.
I understand that. I understand that completely, but, I mean,
And I
is,
think Pat's executive board on the audit are trying to get this resolved, one way or another.
well, then I would urge the legislature or state auditor to have a sense of urgency to get this thing done so we can have some answers and we can move forward. Because yes, there are a lot of entities out there that are relying on this money. But I'm not going to say I'm postponing this indefinitely, but, oh, I completely understand. Motion by DeWitt, second by
I'll second.
Radig.
Just to,
Yeah, I'm not ready to vote yet. I'm just,
Well, we can just,
we're between a rock and a hard spot, and I don't think we're gonna get a result tonight, since we're waiting for different entities, different agencies, if you will, to kind of give us some guidance on where to go with this.
I think postpone, you have to set a date. If you move to delete, you can just put it on whenever, right?
Yeah.
So we just move to delete it? Is that what it, or is it?
It's just a motion to postpone action on this.
Okay.
I'd like to see a date on it.
Well, then put one on there.
Well, when is your auditor meeting?
I was asked that before, I have no idea what, I don't know if the auditor will respond to it.
5 weeks?
That's up to you, I have no idea. I don't even, like I said, there's no guarantee that the auditor is even going to respond to it. I think there will, you know,
It doesn't affect
something's
tax-
got to.
It doesn't affect taxation either. This is gaming and local office, so the decision could be made in 5 weeks or 6 weeks or 7.
I would say 2 weeks, 27th of April.
well, sorry. These council of governments like Simcoe, I mean, they get federal funds. By getting those federal funds that come with strings attached, again, to Dennis's point, I don't know who to be frustrated at, 'cause
Well, they are publicly audited. They pay
Right.
for audits.
the thing that makes me a little sad is the money that was willed decades ago. You know, today, I guess we would probably say, thank you, but no thanks. But
What would happen is they have to understand is that once they give the money to the county, there's no obligation. Once the money is given to the county can choose to do whatever they want with it.
I'm not sure that's the understanding 33 years ago.
Right.
well, of course not, and
I just want to be clear that from the county attorney's standpoint, I mean, we discussed this issue last week and, pointed out the constitutional provision. The board basically determined last week that we should try to find a way to go forward as far as making sure that we meet the requirements that are out there, and that's not a bare donation or contribution. From my standpoint, from the county attorney's standpoint, based on the case law that's out there and the Attorney General's opinion, I do think that this assurances document that we've put forward satisfies what's out there. And I think that if the board would move forward with it, it's a way that provide that oversight and to determine the public purpose. So we got our marching orders last week. We've come forward with it, and that's where we're at with it.
Well, I'm stuck with the idea, this ought to be an Attorney General's discussion, not an auditor's.
Well, an Attorney General
Well,
opinion isn't law either.
I am curious, Pat, what
Neither is the auditor.
exactly do you think the state auditor is going to provide as far as guidance?
I don't know. I just know that the executive board is sending questions to them to have clarified. And I don't know if they will ask for another Attorney General's opinion or what they intend to do. I just know that the executive board is, because, like I said, it's a big concern all over the state. And they're trying to get some guidance on this because they're all in the same boat that I'm in, is that they're concerned with what the actions their board is going to do and where that places them.
Well, we've got budgets rolling in on all these groups, certs, housing. I'd recommend that this motion include April 27th as time to put it back on the agenda.
I'm good with that.
Friendly amendment.
sorry to draw this out, but Dennis, like, what's the next hard critical funding date for certs or one of these groups that?
Well, right now, we do owe money to Meals on Wheels, 3,100. I believe we owe certs about 18, 19,000.
When you say based on what?
Based
When
on
we
this
normally?
year's allocation. We've already paid them 2 quarters on certs, 3 quarters on Meals on Wheels, so we still got a quarter left there. But right now, as it stands, I think all that's got to halt until we find out what's going on. We don't want to give more money now, and then find out we got to repay it back when now we know there's a problem. I don't think we can give anything. Same way possibly with mental health, even though the board approved it, I think we're kind of stymied right now.
Well, that's just it. It feels like we're sitting here with our hands tied and it's frustrating.
The board's gonna have to make decisions, do we go forward with what the county attorney says, or do we need some answers from the Auditors Association or Executive Board asking the State Auditor's Office? Or do you need legislation to prove the county can give money to nonprofits as leverage money?
Well,
Something.
Timing is everything, and here we are up against a budget and everybody else's budget as well,
And we have our public hearing April 20th, but again, this decisions here really doesn't affect taxes whatsoever. It's all local option for gaming revenues. But it affects other people's budget in the near future within 2 months, 2.5 months.
And Joshua, you would have heartburn if we were to continue with these payments without having this assurances document in the next few weeks?
Right, I think when we most recently looked at this and were made aware that there was that there wasn't an assurances type process in place, that's when PJ recommended that the payments cease. And so without that in place, I think that's the right move. I don't think there's a legislative fix to this. I think that it's there in the Constitution that you can't donate to private entities, to nonprofits, and without a constitutional amendment, that wouldn't change. The thing is that you can contract with private entities, you can expend for a public purpose through a partnership with a private entity. Again, you got to identify the public purpose and you got to have oversight. And I think that as long as that's in place, the prior opinions would agree that that's something that a local government can do.
How would you be comfortable with oversight, given the county auditor's comments about not being funded to the extent that would be ideal, I guess? Does that make sense? How would you be satisfied with?
Well, and to some extent, that's between the board and the county auditor and the financial analyst and the board office as far as how they would implement, the documents that we would receive under this assurances document. The assurances document provides the mechanism where we can request information, we can request those financials or whatever it is that satisfy us that the funds are being expended appropriately. But again, as far as who's actually reviewing those, Pat raises some legitimate concerns as far as somebody's, it takes manpower to review that
But not every county has a finance director.
Just the large counties, basically. Small counties basically can't afford it first, and the auditor is basically their budget, everything, these small counties when you're dealing 18, 20,000 people.
So Joshua, would the county be covered under under this document if Dennis was to receive these reports, for lack of a better word?
Well, I think that there should be someone whose job it is to review them. Part of the assurance document allows, if, let's say they submit something written and there's a question that arises, the board can require that entity to come in and present to the board or to submit further written documentation. So it kind of depends on what issues arise as they come in as far as how much manpower it would take to review that. But again, who's reviewing those, I think, is between the board and Pat, but there should be someone that's designated to do that.
I don't see that being a problem for especially certs and these larger councils of governments to present or fulfill any data requests we'd have, either to Dennis or in open session. Obviously, the one that's a little more unknown is the decades-old donation. That should probably be put on hold for sure, but as far as what the county does with it right now, but I just don't see a big hurdle for someone like CERTS to come in and fulfill all this. I mean, you'd think they'd have these readily available for all other jurisdictions they maybe get funding from, and I'm just not sure it really puts the auditor's office in a bad position if it is our determination to work through public requests and the finance director.
They said CERTS and Housing Trust Fund are both audited, so.
Some of those, that seems like a no-brainer to me, certs, but I guess through those documents that are out there, Joshua, how is a public purpose determined or defined or found?
Well, the finding that there is a public purpose in the expenditure is the finding that the Board of Supervisors make when they approve that expenditure. Hopefully there's some documentation to support that or discussion of that ideally, or reflected in, I mean, that's why it's a good idea to have a written proposal submitted that identifies, you know, exactly what they're going to do and how the funds are expended. A public purpose, you know, there's some case law out there on what that is. It's anything that the county could do directly. They could potentially expend money through a partnership with a private entity to do that same thing. You know, in the case of certs, you know, providing transportation, public transportation service. I mean, that clearly meets the definition. It is somewhat fact specific on, you know, what's being done, but there should be some determination from the board and deliberation on that yes, this is a public purpose.
As I see it, there's probably 5 or 6, maybe 7 that we were talking about. This is not 250, it's just a few. And I guess oversight would be through the completion of this form. And the last thing it says is you will document the expenditure of the funds. And if you don't, the suspension of funding will happen. So there's a beginning and an ending. We could assign that to Dennis. I mean, there's only 5 I know about right now. Could be 6, I don't know. But we're not talking about burying somebody with this. And you say it's in the state law that we can do this. I hear you say that.
Well, it's in the Constitution that you cannot give a donation to private entity. The thing that's a gray area is where a public expenditure for a public purpose ends and where it crosses into more of a donation type thing. But the Attorney General's opinions and the case law that are out there says that when the government retains oversight, or if it's a contractual relationship, then it doesn't look like a donation because it's not a gift. There's strings attached. There's oversight, and I mean that just makes common sense as well.
Just like funding a bridge construction through a private company.
Right. It's not as clear cut as that, but it's
Yeah.
a similar concept.
I'm looking at number 8 here. It says the applicant will upon request. Shouldn't you change that to shall?
That would be good.
That would make sense.
Thank you, Dennis.
Then applicant shall, on a certain time basis or as requested.
Before the end of the fiscal year.
No, within a year. If you gave it in February,
They have to spend it by the end of June 30 because they're getting a new request the next fiscal year,
What is,
right? We'd have to verify that what they spent on this current fiscal year allocate, then they get a new allocation next year. So really, the month of June, they should provide something to us. So we don't overlap.
well, see, but you got two groups here. Siouxland Mental Health is only going to do this once, and Lamb Arts is only going to do this once. CERTS, Meals on Wheels, and Housing Trust Fund would be a continued.
Right. But search is every year the board allocates for the new grant for the next year. The only other thing I say, and I agree with Matthew, I can oversee it, that's fine, but I don't want to overstep my bounds with an elected official that really isn't code said he's supposed to audit. Or can we work together on this? Am I right, Pat? I don't want to overstep an elected official. There's trouble there.
As Joshua said, that all the entities need to be involved in that. But how did you make the determination on when you provide funding to those folks now? You're making payments, and is it the board's intent to give money up front to these folks, or as in Mildred Anderson, as I recall, I think that you said that they would make the expenditures and the board would reimburse them, the county would reimburse them. What is the intent
That was
here?
on a quarterly basis, I believe, wasn't it? Mark?
Yeah.
Working with them. Every quarter they'd submit their claims, and then we give them money. So actually, we'd have to prove that it's public purpose before we give them money on claims, based on claims they present. That's just my thought.
I personally don't, it doesn't matter to me as long as it doesn't jeopardize the leveraged federal or state funds.
This really doesn't leverage, mental health doesn't leverage anybody. CERTS and Meals on Wheels, I believe, does.
Yeah.
And some of these other agencies like the housing, Western Tech, we've given all their money.
But that's a good question for if it's reimbursement or upfront. I don't know.
We've been paying them all on a quarterly basis. Except the housing, I think we paid that one lump sum to them.
Well, what if number 8 said applicant shall annually and upon request and further upon request by Woodbury County?
Yeah, can you ask for it anytime? You know, say annually. If you want to look at it every 6 months, you can, but you're at least giving them drop dead annually.
Why don't we just make them audit them, give us an audit at the end of every quarter? If we're paying them quarterly, why don't we just?
They have to audit. I think it's going to be up to the county here to check to see.
Well, to send whatever in. I mean,
That's fine.
Justification of what they spent.
Yes. And that's what item 8, I think, is saying, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the idea was that the expectation would be that they would have those documents on hand and they would be ready to turn over upon our request, but it makes sense to have them go ahead and send those in, and I think we can come up with some language that does that, where they're preparing it and it's being provided to the county.
You have a motion on the floor to the 27th, and want to continue to work on.
Can we withdraw that and start over?
I honestly think if we change it to applicant will on a quarterly basis and upon any further request, then this would be what we asked for from the attorney's office.
Do you want to put the shall in there too?
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
You want to vote on this or withdraw?
Whoever made the motion can ask the body for permission to withdraw with no objection.
Well, I can withdraw my second.
It's fine with me.
can I withdraw my motion then?
Fine with me.
You can.
Well, then where does that leave us? Because we've talked about this for an awfully long time.
Yes.
I'll move approval with the change to say in number 8, applicant shall, on a quarterly basis and upon request by Woodbury County, et cetera.
So that would be 15A, right?
Right.
Was that a motion? Second? I'll second.
Motion by Young, second by Monson. Do you have that language?
We'll get it taken care of.
Any hopefully final comments on this?
Please, no one else donate to Woodbury County in your will, because
One question I have, do we want to send this out to the remaining funds due to these other two entities that you actually obligated money already? and we already made 3/4 of the payment or half.
That's what 15B was getting at.
Yep.
Okay, let's vote on 15A. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. 15B, approval to require nonprofits to complete the Woodbury County funding request and assurances document and gain board approval prior to release of funding. I will move approval.
Second?
Motion by Young, or second by Young, I'm sorry. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0.
So we do send out the ones remaining this year, okay?
Item 16, reports on committee meetings.
Another dry week.
Round 2 of citizen concerns. Do we have anybody on the phone? Thank you.
We lost people. Thanks for sticking around, Sheriff. You know?
Time and a half there. Item 18, board concerns. I will start that we do have someone interested in the magistrate nominating committee, a fellow by the name of Benjamin Ewell, and he is filling out the application if he hasn't already. Has he already?
I haven't received
Okay. That is what I have.
Pat, you want these back?
And these?
Oh, no, you can keep that opener, unless I'll be called into question.
Choose a $2.99 or less?
I'm going to hide it, so I've always got a knife up here.
Anybody else for board concerns? We are adjourned.
Justin, it's not